Koopman. So in short, Accelerator is a Dutch impact investor that has been supporting entrepreneurs in Malawi with capital, training, and a network ever since 2017. And to add clout to their mission, Accelerator has asked Emma to create a comprehensive and critical overview of their business from the start in 2017 through the development in 2018 and with a glimpse into the future. At the end of this evening, you will hear all about it. Emma and Accelerator organized this event to put Accelerator's work into perspective. We will discuss whether the model for investing for profit and impact is effective in Africa and specifically in Malawi. And we will elaborate on the Accelerator model and let other impact investors, researchers, scientists, and entrepreneurs reflect on it. So to do that, we will have two table discussions without a table. Well, it's a small table, but two ring discussions, let's call them that way. The first one will be on investing in Africa in general, and the second will be on the Accelerator model of investing in Malawi specifically. But first, we will kick off the evening with a column. In 2018, she obtained a PhD on the statement that writing journalists give a very one-sided view of poverty in developing countries. Journalist and researcher Mirjam Vos now works for media platform World's Best News and the University of Nijmegen, and she's here to kick off. Mirjam, the floor is yours.
Thank you. If I say Africa, what image comes to your mind? Think about it for a second. Africa. Perhaps you think of images like these. A child in the mud, huts with thatched roof, large families. But I wonder how many of you would think of pictures like these. A town with apartment blocks, middle-class family, supermarkets. Probably not many of you think of these kind of pictures when you think about Africa. But did you know that 40% of all Africans now today live in towns? And that about a quarter is now middle class. The question, how many children in Africa are in primary school? What do you think? 40%? 60%? 80%? Ooh, very good. It's 80%. In Malawi, it's over 90%. Close to universal education. Another one. Let's compare our country, the Netherlands, with one in Africa, Rwanda. Which country has more women as a member of parliament? Which country has a higher vaccination rate of measles? Which country was the first to ban plastic bags from supermarkets? Rwanda, Rwanda, Rwanda. Did you know all this? Ooh, some did, but you wouldn't be surprised that most people don't know. Now let's turn to something completely different. Some of you, the older generation, will be familiar with these kind of pictures. They're from a long time ago when Uncle Agent drove in Porsches, and when you had a breakdown with your car, you called the Wegenwacht and the Paarpaal. There was no highway between the Bosch and Eindhoven, and the Prins Klausplein looked like this. A long time ago, we all know that times have changed. Prins Klausplein looks like this today. Now imagine that you have a TomTom in your car, and you upload new software, and the TomTom says, "Thank you very much, your cards from 1918 have been loaded." Would you drive on the road with such TomTom? No, of course not. But when it comes to Africa, times have changed, everybody knows that, but when it comes to Africa, many of us walk around with roads maps that have been outdated for 30 years or more. Africa is a synonym for poverty, for droughts, hunger, war, corruption. Africa, that's the continent that has received buckets full of aid and has made no progress at all. So 25 years ago, I first traveled to Africa, to Malawi, and here you see a younger version of myself and my husband, much younger. sitting on the couch between our friends Veronica and Sylvester, whom we just met that day in Blantyre, the town where Accelerator is active. And since then, I frequently travel to Malawi, and I've lived in the country 3 times for half a year together with my family. And let there be no misunderstanding, Malawi is one of the poorest countries on earth. And yet, I can tell you a different story. 25 years ago, when I first came there, life expectancy was 47 years. Today it is 63. 25 years ago, 1 in 5 children died before their 5th birthday. That figure has dropped to 1 in 18 today. And 25 years ago, Sylvester, the man who you just saw in the other picture, was infected with HIV without knowing it and without having any chance of surviving. He died 4 years after the picture was taken. But things have changed in Malawi. His wife, my friend Veronica, was one of the first ones who benefited from a free treatment program. And today, 70 out of 100 patients in Malawi do. And she's been on medication for over 15 years, and this is her today. So, the story is, things are bad in Africa, and things are better in Africa. But our Africa Tom Tom keeps repeating to us that things are just bad in Africa. And we plant that software in the minds of our children. My daughter, who stayed with us in Malawi a number of times, she really got tired of explaining to her Dutch friends that we lived in a house in Malawi and not a hut between wild animals. She had to explain that she just went to school, just like other children. And yes, that her Malawian friends had Facebook too. And you can laugh about these things, but our outdated Africa Tom Tom is a serious problem. And this is why. Every year, thousands of Europeans take this ancient roadmap on the plane to Africa on the way to do something good in the continent, as a volunteer or as an intern. After all, people in Africa are poor, their knowledge is miles behind ours, and they must be glad when we come to help and to teach them. So here we see Janneke, a medical student, who tells an African doctor how he should stitch a wound, because she has noticed that the doctor is not following the procedure that she's been taught at school. And her outdated roadmap tells her that African doctors did not have much schooling. So imagine how that doctor must feel, being told lessons by a student of 22 years old. That outdated roadmap tells my Aunt Gerda that development aid is a complete waste. She's not a heartless woman. Suffering in Africa is paining her, and every now and then she donates to Hero 555 or to a charity. But to be honest, she does not think that our help is making any difference. After all, we've been giving aid for 50, 60 years, and Africa is still poor. Look, she just saw another advertisement with a pitiful child on television. Well, ask my friend Veronica if development aid is a waste of money. Her children benefited from the huge expansion of free government schooling, largely financed with British aid. When she was 20 years old, a Dutch doctor saved her life when she had a serious heart problem. And think about the HIV medication that is keeping her healthy, thanks to aid from the Global Fund and the Gates Foundation. And finally, here's my cousin Robert, who also hasn't updated his Africa software for a while. He is affluent and he's keen on investing his capital in young startups. But it would never cross his mind to help entrepreneurs in Africa. Africa? That's poverty and AIDS. That's war and ethnic violence. What good can come from that continent? Lending money to African entrepreneurs? Hell no. Africans are too poor to repay their loans. And besides, the continent is so ridden with corruption that it would be a fool to try. Talking about corruption. How corrupt is Africa? Think of all Malawians who have been in touch with an official, such as a policeman, a civil servant, or a hospital doctor. How many have paid a bribe last year? What do you think? More than half? About half? Less than half? It's 1 in 8. You may argue that this is still a lot, but the truth is, most African officials are not corrupt. And by the way, most African borrowers repay their loans. Our outdated roadmaps hurt us, and above all, they hurt Africa. They deprive Africans and Europeans from equal interactions. They hamper support for successful development interventions. And they rob African entrepreneurs and European investors from opportunities that could benefit both. So, from which year is your Africa software? Please update it as soon as possible. Thank you.
Opening our eyes to reality. So it's now time for the first discussion round. And the main question is investing in entrepreneurship the future for Africa? And the answer will come from experts in different fields. Time pressure forces me to reduce them to their LinkedIn profiles. And they are, of course, more than what I will say, but you can ask them about their kittens and their hobbies later on when we have drinks in an informal setting. So all our experts do have one thing in common, and that is their knowledge of and their care for Africa. So please welcome them one by one, starting with Anne Rappold of the KIT, the Royal Tropical Institute in the Netherlands, the Department of Sustainable Economic Development and Gender. She's an advisor on inclusive agribusiness, and her specialties are international development, economics, and final inclusion. Welcome, Anne. You've traveled in Africa. What would you say is your favorite place, country, corner of the huge continent?
Yeah, I think, first of all, it's a tricky question, of course, but I'll go for my last mission to Africa. It was last year to Uganda, and then especially Kampala district. It's in the far southwest, and it's a potato growing area, which is a bit high in altitude. So you have stunning views over the slopes, over the lake. People are very friendly, always up for a chat and a laugh. So for now, I would say Uganda.
Okay, let's keep it at Uganda. Next guest is Jesse Danjou of the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Sustainable Economic Development Department. He's a policy advisor, innovative finance for development. His specialties are development finance, private sector development. So welcome, Jesse.
Thank you.
Have a seat. Same question to you. What is your favorite corner in Africa, if you've ever been?
I think Kenya, because it's very vibrant and very lively, and especially considering entrepreneurship. There's a lot of new innovations from Kenya.
Yes.
Which I really like.
Well, you should in your position.
Yeah.
Thank you. Welcome. Nico Blau, he's at Goodwill Investments, which is an investment firm in India and different African countries. He has raised over 140 million in capital since 2006, and he has created 32,500 direct jobs. Now, he's a director of marketing. His specialties are change management and corporate reputation.
I correct one thing.
Please go ahead.
It's not he. It's a whole team of people that actually are working together to invest that money.
Yes.
And especially because we have excellent local teams in the countries where we invest that made us very successful. So definitely not Nico was
Not
raised
Nico,
money.
not Nico. He did not create
And here
this
to tell a story.
32,500.
It's all changed the narrative. That made us successful.
I stand corrected, Nico. Welcome. Please tell us what your favorite place in Africa
It
is.
will be Lagos, I think, because it combines everything that's happening in Africa. The growth of the cities, a lot of entrepreneurship, a lot of tech development, vibrant, but also it takes you 4.5 hours to go from one side of the city to the other side of the city. So it confronts you with all the challenges that the country has, but it also produces, I think, the best perhaps on the continent and maybe.
Why is that?
Well, because they are, passionate, motivated, well educated. They know where to find the money. They know where the social issues best. So it's a lot of things coming together actually in Nigeria, especially.
Yes. Lovely. Yes. And finally, for this panel, so to speak, Robert Slijk of Accessorator. He's the founder and chief financial officer. He works 2 days a week, I believe, for Accessorator. Next to that, he's the managing director at Remix, which is a tech data company in predictive football analytics. Did you get the Ajax Juventus right?
You always get it right.
You always get it right. Robert's specialties are business development and data. So, what is your hidden gem in Africa? Share it with us, Robert.
Well, I have to say I go for Windhoek in Namibia. And one of the main reasons is it's like an oasis in the desert where many tribes live together in a respectful and harmonious environment, and they try to make the best out of it. There are so many opportunities and do it with so many different tribes and different cultures that gave me a very warm feeling to see it.
It's called Windhoek. Does the wind perpetually blow there?
No,
That's good. That's good to know. So let's start with a round of personalized questions first, starting with you, Jesse. Official policy in your case, being from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. If we consider investing for profit and impact to be a new form of development aid, what would be the position of the Dutch government on that matter?
So let me start first with asking who's an entrepreneur here? And who's in impact investing? So yeah, I'm from the ministry, and I'm not an entrepreneur myself, so I'm not going to say anything about entrepreneurship and why it's so valuable and why it's so needed in these contexts.
You should know, yes.
I'm going to tell you about how we look at entrepreneurship and how we try to stimulate it, because we see a lot of issues in these economies. We see financial exclusion. We see an ecosystem which is not working as it should, where a lot of challenges are, especially for women and youth. And these are issues we try to tackle with our policy. So our policy, it's aid and trade. So we try to, with our aid policy, we try to pave the way for trade to go. And we stimulate entrepreneurship in multiple ways. We try to focus on the ecosystem, trying to improve the ecosystem, which concerns education, but also the judicial system, anything around entrepreneurship, but also finance, the offerings of finance. And in that sense, we often work with impact investors from the Netherlands, FMO or Goodwill, and we try to take a position there which is in our strength. So we can offer, of course, so what we try to do is we try to stimulate extra investments. We do that by taking on a part of the risk. So other investors can take on the other part of the risk, or the risk is lowered. And on the trade side, we try to stimulate equal value chains or fair value chains, living wages, all these working conditions. And so in that sense, the private sector development is very important for us. We try to stimulate it locally, also through local entrepreneurs. We have the program, for example, GGF, which supports local entrepreneurs, local MSMEs. But we also try to stimulate local capital markets. We try to develop these. And so on the micro level, private sector development and entrepreneurship is very important for us, but also on the macro level, because as the ministry, we are focused on the Sustainable Development Goals, and we try to reach those goals, or the whole world is trying to reach those goals, but there is a large financing gap there, which is about 2.5 trillion, and we cannot overcome this by traditional aid, by traditional subsidies, grants from governments.
Yeah. So what if you're saying that you're stimulating entrepreneurship and you're actually focusing on it, from what I hear? So what kind of role does that leave to governments themselves when it comes to development aid? Is there still direct development aid going on?
Yeah, I think, for example, direct development aid. For example, if you focus on the ecosystem, on education. Education is a very difficult sector to invest in commercially. Very often there is a need for some concessional capital, which is capital coming from the government, which is which demands a lower return. So in that sense, yeah, we call it traditional aid. We are also this is a new field. This market is constantly developing, and as the ministry, we're also developing and taking on new roles, and together with our partners, trying to bring new approaches.
So Nico, you as an entrepreneur and an impact investor, do you feel that Goodwill Investments needs the government?
Absolutely.
Oh, really? Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a role for every stakeholder in the process. I mean, there are many challenges. One is the narrative. You know, we fundraise here and then invest in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa. And one of the things that we are facing here on this side of the ocean is that there's a wrong image of what Africa is all about.
Which is
And
what
the
Miriam
opportunities
was
there.
alluding to.
Yeah, so
Yes.
that's one area. There are many imperfections in the system when you are in the ecosystem, when you look at Africa. When you talk about infrastructure, when you talk about education, talk about legislation. And I think it's all these stakeholders working together, making sure that you have to focus on the same agenda. And I think that's why the SDGs really help also focus the energy and the capital, where we play a specific role in that space and also in the chain of events. But of course, I mean, we need everybody there. But I think what we would probably look for more is that it's clearly defined who is doing what in the chain. So I mean, a government or from Novik, for example, we see them developing in a space where we are active, without the experience, without the professional background, and we see things going wrong. And that's when we say, you know, let's focus on where your strength is, where your capabilities are, your competencies are, where your knowledge is. And therefore, we, for example, we will not invest in primary production, not in farms or things like that. I was talking to Ruud about that. That's because we don't have, I mean, there's a lot to be done there, but we don't have the competence, we don't have the local team. So yeah, there's a role for everybody there.
So you focus on creating a positive, sustainable impact on people and planet.
Right.
How can you at the same time focus on making a profit?
Well, look at us past 12 years. We service through our investments, again, it's not we, it's our investments, serve 30 million households every day with the products and services that improve their livelihoods. While at the same time, we have made returns that are in the top quartile. I mean, that do better than normal private equity funds. I mean, investors who came with us 12 years ago have had a better financial performance throughout the years. And at the same time, see that the money is well invested because it creates jobs, but it's also invested in an ecosystem where, you know, the money, we try to invest there where the money actually works in the local ecosystem so that it stays within the economy. And we've been successful with that. And it's not only because, you know, success, also financial success, attracts more investors, so therefore more capital. So therefore, you know, it attracts more investors in the space where it is needed. But we were also able to invest more of the returns into the economy where we were actually invested. So,
of course there is not. Have you any idea how many times you're
yeah, I mean, it depends a bit on the business, but we have an ecosystem now in Sub-Saharan Africa in the fintech space. We have invested, for example, in a company, MFSF, like the Agent for Africa, where we have done a first calculation and it's about 4 or 5 times that actually goes down.
Should be more.
It could be more, and we hope that it will be more, but it's already more than what happens in many ecosystems here, where it's only once. You know, and in the Chinese investment strategy for Africa is, you know, once every day, everything else. So that's what we try.
Anna, as a researcher, what would you say is important when it comes to investing in the private sector in Africa?
Yeah, well, from a research perspective, I would like to highlight that investing in entrepreneurship is key for development. World Bank data shows that in the next 15 years, 600 million jobs need to be created in order to absorb the growing workforce. And Africa is the continent with the fastest growing population. And entrepreneurship is a key driver for employment, for economic development, also for innovation. And in emerging markets, formal SMEs account for up to 60% of employment and 40% of the nation's income, so GDP. So therefore, and then we're not even talking about the informal sector. And access to finance is often identified as a major constraint. for entrepreneurs. So looking at sub-Saharan Africa, there are in total, again, 44 million formal MSMEs, micro, small, medium-sized enterprises, and 51% is currently unserved or underserved. So for investing in Africa, it's really critical to understand that there is a finance gap, and this gap is actually even wider for women-owned enterprises, and it's really important to understand why this is the case. So I'd like to draw from an example based on women entrepreneurship, women's financial inclusion, and that is that there are certain rules in society that determine what people can have, what they can do, and what they can be, and these cause constraints for people. It can be within the financial sector, but also outside of the financial sector. And looking at men and women, some constraints might be similar. So if you have a smaller ticket size for a loan, you're perceived as higher risk and it's more expensive. If you live in rural areas, maybe you have to travel very far to the bank in order to get a loan. So these might be similar constraints for men and women. But women, because of their gender, they may face constraints differently or to a greater degree. And for example, that is that you have limited time, limited mobility due to care work at home. You may have lack of ownership of assets and land, which is required for collateral, maybe lower rates of education, lower rates of financial literacy, maybe little lower confidence or trust in institutions. So it's important that these constraints influence whether people can have access to finance, but also if they can use it and can benefit from it. So if a woman entrepreneur, for example, has a loan, then we need to ask ourselves, does she also have the freedom and the choice to invest the money in the way that she wants?
And should she? I mean, looking from an African perspective, African culture, should we expect that of women there to, in fact, follow our example, our Western example?
Well, I think that's a very valid question because you're talking about culture, but at the same time, you're also talking about human rights. And it's also a matter of not assuming that account ownership actually creates an impact and that it works for women to grow their businesses out of subsistence level. So we shouldn't, actually what you see that's happening is that often financial products and services are developed in a blind. So it doesn't mean we should talk and determine what is good for them, but it means that you have to involve them to actually understand your market and understand their needs and understand their constraints. And now I'm using an example for men and women, but it's also the same for people of different ages, different ethnicities, different classes of income, maybe micro, small, medium-sized enterprises. They have different needs and they need tailored products and services, and it's critical to understand your market.
Yeah, I have a question for you, basically, because one of the things that we experience investing in Africa and trying to get a grip on the marketplace is that 80% is informal. You know, I mean, you're talking about formal, but 80% is informal. SMEs, for example, shop holders. So one of the key challenges for us is finding those business models that actually work for the informal markets, because that's where the impact is. That's where the large communities are that are being served. So informality, according to our terms that we know in Europe, of organizing more or less something for the informal market that is not organized. So what's your perspective on that, on this informal nature?
Well, I think it's a very valid question, and I think if you look at women entrepreneurs, the majority, I think 97% of all micro enterprises, of women-owned enterprises are in the micro sector. So that is indeed where there is a large impact potential, and especially for women in the informal sector, access to credit only is not enough. So you have to complement it with non-financial services, being, for example, financial literacy training, being coaching, mentoring, but also role models in society and in important institutions to actually get them on board.
Yes. Do you think impact investment is valid and desirable in all sectors?
Well, there's a lesson actually that we can learn from microfinance. And first of all, you need to unpack a bit what we mean with impact and what we mean with effectiveness. So, for example, women that do have saying about households or about expenditures, they tend to spend their money more on family well-being in terms of health and education. And then if you measure effectiveness as business growth only, you're overlooking things. So looking at impact study from, for example, the microfinance segment, there's actually very few or hardly any study that looks beyond account ownership and beyond business growth. And a series of studies done by Energy and the Flow, they measured the impact of credit on business growth of subsistence level women-owned businesses, and they didn't see any change. A small change was observed in terms of ownership, but not in terms of business growth. They explained it that women are mostly operating in typical women sectors, meaning that there's low probability of growth, or that they might invest in or spend their money on more social things, being healthcare or family well-being. So if you look at, for example, women economic empowerment, you have to look at impact at different levels. Being the individual level, access, control over resources, but also confidence. Also business growth, performance, productivity, but also the relational level, and being bargaining power in the household, in the market, trust between you and institutions. And then we can also talk about formal laws and social norms. But impact and effectiveness, you have to look at different levels.
Thank you, thank you. So Robert, of Accelerator, impact investor, what is your view on traditional NGO work in Africa?
Well, I think a lot of good things already have been said today. And I agree with Jesse that we see a lot of NGOs, traditional NGOs, focusing mainly on the public sector, health, and education. Also, the figures that we showed already today shows that it's really helpful in these public sectors. When we come to private sector, we as Accelerator believe that it's best to have a more equal playing field with the local entrepreneur, the local partner, that we focus on their entrepreneurial skills so that we can indeed help them on day-to-day business with financial literacy, that we are able to support them with how they do sales, how they do production, in order to make them more entrepreneurial and more skilled in where they aim for. And that's also why we choose to do it this way as Accelerator, with people on the ground, with day-to-day monitoring. Otherwise, we believe it's not going to work, and it's not going to have the impact on the economic growth that we foresee.
And the effectiveness. Yes.
And of course, eventually the effectiveness.
So Accelerator is in its early stages. What role do you see for yourself when it comes to sustainable development of the continent?
No, I think I can add to what Nico already said, is the successes that we already accomplished in this 2 years of our existence, and for the booklets that will be handed out later today, everybody can read it. This will attract more and more investors. And the model that we have, it's not rocket science. It's based on commitment into to what we do, what we believe in, endurance to make sure that it eventually really works. And this can be transferred to other countries. It can be transferred to other investors, because the model it's open for everybody to use.
So if it's so relatively simple, as I hear you say, why are we only just doing this now?
Yeah, that's the most important question, I think.
Well, that's why I'm asking you.
From my perspective, now with also new technology, making sure that there is a kind of a more easy way to communicate with your African partners, makes it also easier to transform, to translate the knowledge that we have here in the developed countries into the African countries. I think that's, for one starter, it's why this is going to develop now, and it's not completely new. I already heard people saying it's already there from the beginning, but now we see that because the economy of the African continent is increasing, more investors will come. And so it's a sustainable financial circle that we are in together with people investment, and that will attract more and more. So why it's so new, maybe.
I think we have to be very, very careful not to think colonial again. That we will bring the the knowledge
All
to
the
Africa
knowledge,
about how
yes.
they have to be an entrepreneur. So that I think that's one of the things that I learn every day from my African colleagues, because they knock me on the head and say, this is a wild male attitude, Nico, and then you're
Yeah.
old as well. So
And
I'm very, very
because
careful about
I
that.
am not a white.
No, but very careful
Yes,
about that.
and you're actually bringing me to my
Yeah.
next, because I'd
Yeah.
like to zoom out a
Yeah.
bit now and actually, yes, consider this topic. Because let's not forget the Berlin Conference in 1884, which had huge impact on the continent of Africa. You literally went to bed with your partner that one night, and the next morning you would wake up in Malawi and he was in Niger. And that had great impact on the African continent. And then we have the other stuff. For example, France is still bleeding their ex-colonial colonies almost to death with money they have to pay to, what is it, 85% of profits from ex-French colonies now has to go straight to France. So we cannot pretend
It's still
this
there.
did not happen.
No.
And I'm sure we need to all take care that we don't come up with a new model that just seems to be investing in Africa, but in fact it's.
Well, our experience is that they will tell us not to. I mean, it's they, meaning, all the young, passionate, I mean, over 50% of the certain population is under 35, well educated, tech savvy. I mean, not everybody, but I mean, it's a lot of countries, but a lot of this young population is actually very demanding for him or herself, for the economy, but also for the relationship with the West. So I think there's a lot of power there, and our idea is that we have to bring some of our experiences and the capital that is here to create a framework, conditions, so that they can be successful in their own being with their own. I mean, one of the entrepreneurs that we invested in, Dario Kuju, fantastic guy from Benin, worked in a refugee camp, is a personal friend of our Minister of Finance. So I mean, he's well connected. And he's there. He said, "You guys in the West are always talking about impact investing. Like, what is this? I'm just solving an issue now. I'm creating a business. So yeah, if you call it impact, fine. Give me the money and I go with it." And I think that's where we also have to start changing our perspective.
So how do we
Instead
do
of us
that?
helping the rest
Yes.
of the world.
So let me ask a question to Robert. How can we, because we did grow up for centuries in the West, believing that we were the ones, exporting knowledge and business, and how can we change our own mindsets to do it properly, to have a
Like I said in my introduction, it's creating an equal playing field with your local partner. I mean, it's not that we
No, but
are.
that's still you deciding what the equal playing field is. That's
No,
what
in fact, we even do it the other way around. We have a minority of shares. So in fact, our local partner in Malawi, they own 60% of the company. So they are in charge. They tell us what we can do. And they tell us what they need from us in terms of support.
So that's a big difference with how it used to be.
Power balance.
Yeah.
Power balance.
Because in the past, it was like with the foreign direct investment, just Western companies came to Africa, set up their factory, and they owned 100% of the company,
Yeah.
and all the profits went back to the West. And
So is that one of the keys to doing it properly?
that's what we experienced.
How would you respond to that? Yes, sir.
I think so. We're trying to find new ways of dealing with that. I think these type of models, even business accelerators and business incubators, are definitely needed to create the flow of interesting projects and interesting pipelines. And then, of course, because we have a lot of capital here, we can support them through that journey, and then also with the finance to help them grow. And indeed, entrepreneurship is the engine of an economy and of growth. So we definitely support them. As the government, we see a couple of rules for us, especially. It's very often a lot to ask of an impact investor to create a whole ecosystem. It's an impact investor cannot pay for a whole educational system, cannot change the laws by itself. So that's where we come in. we try to set the scene, the ecosystem, the context right for indeed our partners to actually we reach our goals through our partners.
Right, because that was actually my question. What is it that the ministry does to avoid replaying scenes from yesteryear, to come into this new era,
Yeah.
and to realize that it's not us bringing
No.
all the goodies.
No.
What is it that the Dutch government does to put that into all our brains?
In our programs, we try to take a couple of steps back to see, of course, what is needed in the local context, to try to deliver that, or to share knowledge, to make the connections, even with knowledge institutes, to go there to develop these systems. And then when you reach a certain scale, when finance is needed, for example, there's a lot of, I think it's already mentioned, that there's a lot of perceived risk in this market. So this market is new, it's unknown for people. People see a lot of risks, but maybe these risks are not real in that sense. It could also be political risks. It could be many different types of risks. There's also currency risk because these economies are sometimes unstable. And we as the government can support with facilities to help investors to invest in more easily.
I think you answered my question. I'm not sure
Oh,
though. But it's all right. You
But the question is, you do not take away these risks, I presume.
yes, we do. Yeah, so we can provide guaranteed facilities, first loss facilities. So if investors come in and something goes wrong, we take the first loss. So we
Yes.
take away risk.
But that's protecting the western side of the story.
Yeah, and sometimes also the local markets. So we do local market development, so we can give guarantees to local banks if they lend to local SMEs and something goes wrong in their portfolio, we can be the guarantor to make sure they keep their money.
What would you say, Anno, it would be the right way to right our wrongs from the past and to carry on in the future, creating that level playing field that Robert is talking about?
Well, I think there are different roles for different partners, so I don't think for now it should be the discussion whether it's the main role for NGOs or whether it's the main role for private sector, because I think they serve different purposes. I think we can think about being projects in development cooperation for a specific time period, so there's a lot of support. Chasing targets when the project ends, it's difficult to have something that's actually lasting and sustainable. I think that's a valid question, but then it's both valid for NGOs and for private sector. So private sector initiatives are very important for financial sustainability, of course, in the long run. But with market mechanisms, there's always people that are included and there's always people that are excluded. In an ideal world, we would need NGOs, but unfortunately, we're not there yet. So I think they serve different segments and different purposes. Also, if you look at humanitarian aid, it's also not something that will be financially sustainable. So I don't think it's the past and the future and either one or, but I think they serve different purposes and they need collaboration to offer services and products together that actually can help people.
We agree. I mean, what we see when it comes to development of markets, that especially NGOs and public, it's an earlier stage. It's helping to get somebody with a good idea and a good initiative on the feet, getting the first business model kind of sorted out. And then once that is mature or investor ready, that then the private sector comes in with a different mindset, with a different skill set, and help that company, grow through the growing pains. That's also when entrepreneurship is different and more needed. Because especially in these first stages of kind of the birthing stage of businesses, that's what we see, for example, in Ghana quite a lot with microfinance institutions focused on rural banking for women. And they wouldn't get off the ground with that kind of support. Because an investor like us, we don't know how to do that, that's one. But two, also our investors and our mandate doesn't allow us to do that kind of financing. So if those two stages could cooperate a bit better, maybe then we currently do. But there's a lot of contacts that we have, for example, with the Dutch ministry when it comes to such projects. Then you can actually help get a company or an initiative go through the difficult stages of development. And that's where now often initiatives are lost. And that's, I think, where a lot of complaints about NGOs come from, because they get something on the feet and there's no follow-up there, not from the private sector. And then, after 2 or 3 years, it goes down and then people say money's lost. But that, I think, that could be one of the improvements.
You see a lot of differences there in the different types of sectors. So in infrastructure and energy and industry, it's going a little bit better. The projects are larger. The whole project cycle is a bit longer, and the private sector comes in a bit more. The government steps out a bit more. Even though in larger projects, we also put concessional capital in these constructions. But in certain other sectors, it's much more difficult. In health and education and agriculture, it's much more difficult to get private sectors in. So the government and NGOs do a bit more.
And one example, it's not on entrepreneurship, but it's more on savings, but it's an example from Rwanda. That Care International, an NGO, works with informal saving groups, village saving and loan associations. So they have informal savings with them, they do capacity building, and at some point, if they are stable enough, they have a microfinance market. So different microfinance institutions pitch themselves and the products that they, and that's where the informal saving group starts to have a formal group saving account, and if that goes well, then they might increase to individual accounts. But I think that's a very nice example of where NGO is involved in the earlier stage, building capacity, and then private sector takes over.
The thing that worries me, this is purely on a personal level, I personally don't think what we should do is to look at how we do stuff here, the things that we find important. We like to make a profit, we like to look into the future, we want to build a little empire. That may not necessarily be the case everywhere in the world. Yes, we the Dutch. Yes, I'm a Dutch person, I'm not an African.
No.
We're also not all Dutch people.
No, but I'm talking about the way Western countries investing in other countries, because I see a lot of it, not only in Africa, I see it in the Caribbean as well. And the thing that worries me is that to me it looks like we know how to do business and feel that the rest of the world should be doing business the same way in order to grow, in order to count on the global field. You shaking your head?
I disagree, at least from how we as success rates. We are not there to make huge profits. We are there to eventually leave behind a sustainable business with a partner who is fully 100% owned by the local partner, and he can just expand it in his own way. And of course, we have to pay back our own investors, and we want to have some certain profits so we can reinvest it in new SMEs. But it's not our goal to have as many profits as needed.
No, but I didn't say that.
Because then you're going to overstretch a company,
Yes.
and then after the 5 years, it will collapse.
Yes, but that's not actually what I said. What I said is we do tend to export our idea on what good business is. No?
No,
Correct me if I'm wrong again.
no, I don't think so. We are part of a group of people that could well invest. We try to solve a social issue, right?
A
The
social
social
issue
issue could-
defined by whom?
Could be by the people who are facing
Okay.
the social issue.
Good, yeah.
So, and then what we see is that there are a lot of people there who are in the social issue, who face it, who deal with it every day. They have found a solution for it. They come to us and say, can you help me solve this social issue? We say, yes, we can. And then we help them with capital and with management support. So the focus is on the social issue. And we have learned that the most sustainable, from our perspective, the most sustainable solution for the social issue is to build a company. You build a company that is healthy. You build a company that is scalable. You build a company that can actually serve a lot of people facing the same issue. But it's not us sitting in Amsterdam saying, oh, there is a social issue with education in Malawi or in wherever, let's go and solve it. There are people like that, you know. We see a lot of people also coming to us who've been to Tanzania on a safari trip and say, I've been to Africa, people, I know the solution. They mostly come from Silicon Valley or wherever, and they go and start their own company.
Yeah.
And these companies all go broke.
They do.
Because they have no idea how it is to work in Africa, in whatever, whatever country. So we try to focus on supporting the entrepreneurs and the team that have the entrepreneurs as a sample that knows best how to solve the issue. And we
have
support them
defined
with
their own issue.
it's their issue.
Yes,
that's
that's
not our
the
issue.
key, that's the key part of your answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what yeah.
Because I also think when you're talking about impact investing, the financing sector is also, there's a lot of innovations coming from this sector and also innovations coming from Africa. The fintech solutions coming from there are really a breakthrough in the whole financing landscape. Is another example, which is a really relevant financing mechanism for local entrepreneurs there, which is really transforming this whole finance sector as well.
So I guess from talking this half hour, we could conclude that it's time for NGOs and governments to get out of the way and to let business-to-business stimulation take place. I'm just teasing.
I would say no. I think we started the conversation with everybody has their own role, and I think that statement stays. I think you still need the NGOs to develop certain parts of the project cycle or certain public goods. You need the government to take on certain risks maybe or develop certain parts of the ecosystem. You need impact investors because of the financial sustainability. You need knowledge institutes to provide the impact investors with maybe better knowledge, and they need to feed us with better programs. I think everybody has a role.
Teamwork.
Teamwork, definitely. SDG 17.
Let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
Anna, your
It's maybe a bit boring for a table discussion, but I have to say that I agree.
Oh, that's really
collaborations,
yes.
different parties have different roles, and I don't think it's one or the other.
Nico?
Well,
Everybody agrees?
Well, I mean, what actually is your statement now?
I'm just asking what the way toward the future should be.
The future is put all your money with goodwill and then. I think I mean the collaboration could improve, focusing on the imperfections in the systems that we see, and these imperfections are defined by the people who face them every day. And if we are able to change that perspective, I think then what can be done, and that's that side of the equation. The other side of the equation is here. I think, and I'm looking for partners to help us change the narrative.
Yeah.
Change the narrative on what's happening in the continent. Change the narrative of the positive side of development, and not the doom and gloom that we're faced with.
And whose interest is, by the way, that we still have that old narrative?
Well, I don't think that there's anybody specifically focusing on maintaining that attitude. But I was talking about that yesterday with somebody who said, I'm already an old guy, and I lived in a small town in the Achterhoek. And every year, when I was 5, 6 years old, every year there came a guy with a fan from the Red Cross, and he had a movie projector, and then he showed a movie. But before the movie was shown, there was a 5-minute documentary about the Jaffa. And that's the picture that many of us were educated with. And it's not about us, that we continue to paint the picture, but it's so ingrained.
I have to correct you now,
Yes.
because some NGOs actually really do that.
Yeah.
I was in contact with one NGO with one of those little films that you talk about.
Yeah.
And actually the dying child in the film is a grown woman now, has a job.
Of course.
But so it would be in their interest to spread that word.
Maybe.
But it's also we as the government, we try to capture all this knowledge and the best practices, and also to share it with other impact investors. We stimulate a lot of knowledge sharing in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I should tell you who the NGO was so you could work on it. Yes.
We all know.
I'm not sure. Oh, okay, so rounding up this part, Robert, what will you take with you from what we've been discussing now? Anything new come to
Yeah,
light?
definitely. I think what we did as Accelerator, we were really focusing on ourselves as an impact investor. We work together with local entrepreneurs, and I'm happy to see that there are also other institutions that we indeed need to collaborate on a higher level to make sure that all aspects of making Africa great and make sure that there's economic growth that we have to do.
That's my line, it's my script, but never mind, you got it first. Yeah. And what can you as Accelerator do to change the narrative? Once you really.
We spread the word. I think what we do here today is already another step in the right direction. And I think that's also the people sitting here just to talk to people, convince them that it's not all about risk, that it's dangerous. It's a beautiful story, and we're about to continue this.
Thank you. One or two reactions from the room. If you wish, just raise your hand. We have a microphone there that can come to you. Don't be shy. No? No, this is always the case in the Netherlands. Big mouth, except when you ask.
The final statement on this is we definitely see a momentum now in impact investing. We see a lot of new actors moving in that direction. Also, traditional actors moving more in that sector, and now also even pension funds. And then, of course, when these actors are moving into the field, the capital starts to grow very fast, and that's where you create even more momentum. So we definitely see this as a changing sector, and we see it moving very fast.
So the future's bright.
For me, yeah.
For you? Okay. Thank you all. And we'll continue later on with the second part of the round talk, so to speak, and more on that later. We have a short break now, time for a drink, maybe a bite to eat, and we'll reconvene at 6:15 for part 2. Thank you.
Second one is to use the biological agent there has to be someone in medical legal side who has to say, hey, this stuff It gets pitched to keep down scale of the enterprises. What's our aim? What is It's a new example.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite you back for part 2 of this gathering. Please have a seat. Let's continue to talk. Have a seat, ladies and gentlemen. We're starting part 2 of our gathering. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Chop, chop, chop. Can everybody find a seat, please? We got sofas here, we got chairs, we got everything. Let's have a seat and we can continue. So welcome back, everybody. Did you enjoy the short break? Did you have a chance to mingle with other people? Did you meet new people? Yes. It's all right, as long as you made an impact on it. Yes. So welcome back. Before we continue with the second panel of discussions, I'm still going to call it a table discussion because we do have a small table in the middle. The second table discussion during which we will zoom in on the accelerator model. But let's first talk about what it entails. So here to bring us up to speed is the director of the Blantyre Office of Accelerator. Please welcome Patrick Namakoma. You need this.
Excuse me.
Oh, this is not your table, sir. Right here.
Yeah, sure.
And do you need this microphone? I think so.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Patrick Nama. I'm the country director for
Hold the mic right here. Thank you.
Accelerator Malawi. I'm standing before you just to give you a presentation on how Accelerator works. My presentation is in 5 steps. I'm going to tell you how we make ourselves known in Malawi. Secondly, I'll also tell you how we do business case selection. And there's an issue with infrastructure setup, rolling out of businesses, as well as exiting. Let me, in the first place, tell you that we have a role to make ourselves known in Malawi. The reason is we want to attract suitable and best entrepreneurs. We look for knowledgeable partners. How do we do this? There are quite a number of channels that we use. The first one is we have what we call information sessions, something more similar to what is happening now. We have a website in place where all information about Accelerator, how we work, who we partner with is there. We also use newspapers, radio, and TV adverts. On the information session, this is the scenario where Accelerator invites potential partners in probably halls like the way we have gathered here, and we present information and all the whatever is required for partners to know. So far, we have held 4 information sessions in Malawi, Blantyre and Lilongwe, informing Malawians who we are and how we work. We also work with other organizations such as National Youth Council of Malawi. This is a government department. It is there to work with young people. Let me also inform you that in Malawi, when you say young people or youth, this is an age between 18 to 35 years. It might be different from the way you define young people here. So we work with National Youth Council and also UNDP. National Youth Council has got a wide network of young people, and they have made quite a good inroads. And we use the organization to, or I would say, we work together to identify good partners. In the end, partners who are interested, who are committed, who want really to be in partnership with Accelerator, they submit to us business cases. When we receive business cases, we don't just take everything on board. We have to do what we call case selection procedure. In this one, the reason is we want to identify profitable cases and also suitable partners. This is a planning stage, and it also marks the beginning of our partnership. So we plan together from the case selection process, the case selection stage. In this stage, we assess several factors that will make the business viable. For instance, we look at the profitability. If the businesses are really profitable, we also look at the partner integrity. It is our responsibility, or it is our wish, to work with people who are honest, trustworthy, and really committed. We also assess the competencies that they have, as we are trying to develop businesses, trying to promote small and medium enterprises in Malawi. There is an aspect of social and environmental impact. We don't want to harm the environment. We want also to make sure that the society is not complaining. So we assess the social the environmental impact of the business cases that we receive. Business cases that are not fit, that are probably harming the environment, that are not even profitable, we reject them. We take on board those ones that are really fitting in the criteria. So in the end, partnership agreements are drawn. Accelerator and the potential partners, we try to bring in legal documents to cement the relationship or the partnership between these two parties. When partnership agreements have been drawn, this marks the beginning of implementing or doing the business. But the first thing in doing the business, we do setting up of infrastructure. This is a stage where we want to set up suitable environment for the operation of the business. Partners contribute assets to show commitment. We encourage our partners to at least contribute something. Land could be buildings, could be equipment that form part and parcel of the business. So Accelerator comes in to provide start capital. This is the money and that is used in the business. And this money or this capital is for construction of infrastructure, which is needed, and also procurement or say buying of machinery and equipment. We don't give the capital all at once. We do it gradually. The reason is we want to monitor how the money is used. We want also to make sure that the money is not abused. So we give the money based on the stages of implementation. If say someone is constructing a housing for livestock, we look at all the stages and provide funding based on the development. During the setting up, we also guide partners in securing contracts. In Malawi, it is not very common for businesses to work or to secure contracts. So we try as much as possible to help them. There are sales contracts, we have construction contracts, we have renting contracts, all these we guide our partners to manage them well. And when this stage has been accomplished, we have necessary infrastructure in place to help operation of the business. The third stage is business rollout or production. This is where the business has a chance to grow and also become sustainable. Accelerator helps in building the capacity of the partners. We frequently interact with our partners to support production and marketing as well as sales. Under this activity, you'll see that there is need for meetings. We do meet our partners regularly. There are calls that we make. We visit them, visit the businesses to see physically what is happening. And also, we require the partners to give us reports at agreed intervals. Different types of capacity is built. One of them is helping or working with partners to come up with profit and loss, as well as yearly reports. In Malawi, not many people are very knowledgeable with running businesses professionally, and helping them to draw profit and loss is always like helping them to understand the business and show the way how the business would grow. This stage empowers and equips partners to run the businesses professionally, so that whatever is produced is sold to intended markets as planned and also at right prices, quality, and quantity. Partnerships that we form in Malawi are not forever. They are a 5-year partnership. So there is a time where Accelerator has to exit. This is a stage where we believe that both partners will take next steps. The partner will be independent to operate the business without accelerator, and accelerator at that point too will be able to reach out to new partners. What happens here is that we sell all our shares. As Robert indicated here, our partnership starts with a 60-40 shareholding arrangement. But over time, a partner is allowed to buy the shares from accelerator gradually every year, up until the final year, the 5th year, when all the shares are bought. And the revenue that is realized from the sale of the shares is reinvested in new businesses. So in the 5th year, accelerator ends its involvement in the business, and the business tends to be 100% owned by the partner. And we think this way the business becomes sustainable and fully owned by the partner. This marks the end of my presentation. Thank you so much.
Please join me. And I wonder, I'm talking to our technician, Matthijs. Is there a way that Mr. Namakuma can have his own microphone? Or do you-
I have spare, yeah.
Please wire
You
it
can
if you
forward
can,
this one.
because it will make it a little more easy to talk. Or I have one, which is great. Thank you. Would you mind using this one? Yeah. Okay. So before I invite the rest of the panel, I'd like to know, what is your favorite spot in Malawi? Where should we all go? No, better not. Where should we not go and leave it the way it is?
Where should it go?
In Malawi. Any favorite spot?
I don't think there's a place which is very scary. I think.
I'm saying a beautiful spot.
Oh, your beautiful spot where you
Good
should.
spot.
Ah, okay.
Where we should not go so that it stays beautiful. One that you love.
I don't think there is, because all places in Malawi are beautiful, nice, and everyone would want to visit them. So
Yeah.
I don't think there is a.
You don't have a secret one. Okay, let's.
It's,
But Malawi is beautiful. I haven't been to Malawi, so is it a beautiful country?
yeah, Malawi is a beautiful country. It has friendly people. It's peaceful. Of course, someone was talking about wars in Africa, but in Malawi, we have never experienced something like that. It's always peaceful,
Yes.
people, happy people, and good environment to do business.
And good food?
So much.
Okay.
And in fact, we also sometimes eat bizarre food, but
Well, I saw a whole truck of red pepper. Is that staple food in Malawi?
no.
Or is that for the export to the West?
That's for sold to households or to hotels, restaurants, just to help them in, ingredients of the recipes they have.
Good.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
I'm just checking. The microphone really isn't the very best we've ever experienced, but maybe we can work with it. Oh, there's another one there. Hold on. I'm just gonna get you another microphone. This one. Let's see if this is better. Maybe use this one. Okay, sorry to be a little bit unorganized. Our first guests who will join us here, let's call on Andrew Mzembe of the Breda University of Applied Sciences. He's a lecturer, PhD candidate. He has projects on sustainability in the agricultural value chains. And you too, sir, are from Malawi, I believe?
Yes, you're right.
So same question. What's a great spot to visit in Malawi?
My favorite sport or district that anyone interested in visiting Malawi could go and visit is Ruhe, Livingstone.
Yeah?
Yeah, so
Livingstonia?
yeah.
Yes.
So at the top, and then you'll be having a beautiful scenery of Lake Malawi.
Ah, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so we need to keep that in mind.
Yeah, and also going towards Livingstonia, you'll be able to see safari,
Of course.
Nika National Park.
Oh, wow. When can we all go? Let's all go. Yes. Thank you for this, for the moment.
Yeah, and also it's the place that I had lived for a significant part of my life. my childhood.
You are from Livingstone, yeah?
Yeah, room.
Yes, okay,
Lecture area.
yes. Don't make it too Don't develop it as what they're doing elsewhere in the world.
Yeah.
All right, calling now on the founder and chief operating officer at Accessorator, Maarten Verboven. Please join us. He is also the owner of MV Onderneming, which is a consultancy in environmental and project management. His specialties are process management and implementation. And you too, Martin, we'd like to ask your favorite spot in Malawi.
My favorite spot in Malawi would be somewhere on the edge of Mount Mulanje. It's the biggest mountain in Malawi. Because, I like to be in places where you can do great there, but once you are there, what you can see from there, it's so rewarding. So
Yeah.
fantastic.
And when you say it takes a long time to get there, can you describe that? Is that hours or days of travel?
The last time we went up together with my wife, it took about 5 hours, 6 hours in heavy rain and going up.
But like you
Quite an
said, the
experience.
reward is great.
Yeah, only the next day, because of course when you come it's cloudy,
Yes, and
and
it's
then the sun will come.
and then the sun will come. Wonderful. Yeah, Jaap Sprerenberg, who is of Hivos Impact Investment. He's the managing director. His specialties are startup management, entrepreneurship, and impact. Are you familiar with Malawi?
Yes.
Yes, tell us where to go and where not to go.
Well, actually, I'm not allowed to do tourist things when I'm working, so we are supposed to go back to Holland as soon as we're finished. To appear that we're wasting your guys' money. I was thinking about in the last the place that for me was the biggest surprise in Africa was actually the airport of Zimbabwe, where
Why?
the people are so super nice. I went to Zimbabwe, we know all the media. I actually was a little bit scared because it's a dictatorship, you hear about it, then when you're there it's all quite okay. And the people are very, very nice. And when you were asking here about Malawi, I was thinking about the airport in Malawi. That's really, I think, from a global perspective, especially you have a little port for the Malawis, and then you have different gates for the United Nations, or for the EU. So all these big NGOs, they have their own entrance where you need to go, and then a little bit for the tourists, and then a small gate for the Malawi. So you see really the airport is like run by NGOs, international organizations. That's so I like the whole of Malawi, except the airport.
Except, let's skip the airport. And last but not least, Ruud Nijs, who is an entrepreneur, founding partner of Inclusive, that supports inclusive supply chains from farm to fork. Founding partner of SC Synergy, delivers health systems and renewable energy in remote parts of Africa. That's a lot, and there's so much more. And your specialties are international finance and sustainability. So are you familiar with Malawi?
Yes, I am.
Yeah?
My favorite spot is in the south in Bangula. And that's because my daughter lived there for a year and we were allowed to visit after work, so that's it.
Oh, okay.
Being an entrepreneur, you can do what you want, so that's it. But it's a very nice area. It's one of the driest areas of the world. But if you were there, then you can find real entrepreneurship as well.
Yes. So what kind of people do you find there? Or what's their
Well,
spirit?
At the end of the day, I think at that area, 90% of the people are farmer. So at the end of the day, you see a lot of farmers there, but everybody is so nice, and there are a lot of Christians. The religion there is completely different from here. That's part of their lives. They are all very joyful and friendly, and I really like it there. And they are pretty smart.
Yes. But farmers, not particularly ready for big business, maybe?
Well, that's one of my thoughts when I heard to the first discussion. I mean, I do understand where the, let's say, IT and services is going up, but in the agricultural sector, there's still a lot to do there.
So let's zoom in on each of your fields and knowledge of expertise. First round of questions, starting with Andrew. Like I said, you're a Malawian, you're an expert in agriculture and sustainable development.
Yeah.
Why is the Accessorator model a promising one for Malawi? What would you say?
Okay, to be honest with you, just came across the accelerator model. I think now it has been for some few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I came across this company through one of my contemporaries in university, who is one of the partners of Accelerator. Accelerator. Yeah,
Yes.
Accelerator.
Yes.
Yeah, Christopher there, someone who, when we were in college at the university, I had to look upon up to him, the hard work, the passion, and even the commitment to whatever he touches upon. Yeah, so I came across through that because he liked a video of Hans and Laura in Malawi. So I said, wow, this is interesting. And I discussed with my wife, and we went straight into Accelerator and the company itself. We looked at the model, and we thought, wow, this is what Malawi needs at the moment.
Why?
Why? Because traditional models of development, and I've been part of it, working with organizations like World Vision International, Concern Universal, and even running a European Union funded project, which was big, lots of investment, but then it didn't work out. All the projects mostly didn't work out. The sustainability was not in there. Why? Because of the targeting mechanism for all these projects. It's normally the poor. Yeah, the poor or the poorest of the poor. And these are the people who normally would just get aid, and maybe they don't have any hope. Yeah, so the previous development model, and which is currently running, is okay, we give aid. But then with the model that Accelerator has, I think it's the model that we need in developing countries like Malawi.
Because it includes the countries?
The reason why is that it focuses on the middle.
On the middle.
On the middle, people like myself, people like Patrick, people like Christopher Bear, who has been to university, went back, worked, accumulated lots of experiences, and decided to say, I think business is for me. Not working for somebody and just getting money at the end of the month. Yeah. So that is what I thought this model is quite promising. When I was in Malawi, I think some 13 years ago, after I had worked for a few years, I decided to do business, to apply the knowledge and skills that I had learned at a university college of agriculture to farming. My parents didn't have enough money. Even my peers didn't have enough money to lend me to start a business. I went to the bank with few funds that I had from my son. The bank said, we cannot. Yeah, you're too risky. So I called back, went back, and I said, okay, I'll continue working. So with this model, I think it's giving an opportunity to people who are driven, motivated, passionate to do good for the society in general. But then, even the benefits that those people realize from all this model, all these ventures that are there, it doesn't just stay with them. It trickles down. You can see people like Bear, Patrick here, that are employing a number of people.
Right.
But then when you look at the traditional model of development, focusing on the poor, it's just them within a short period of time, and then it doesn't trickle down to other people. It just remains with them. Yes.
So briefly, what factors should Accelerator be aware of? What are typical Malawian things, culture, or ideas, or philosophies that Accelerator should be aware of?
I think most of the things have been touched upon, and I will focus on the selection of beneficiaries. I think my experience working in Malawi and living in there, I think I've come across two types of entrepreneurs. We have entrepreneurs who are necessity driven. They might be working, but then they'll say, oh, let me do this business as, okay, as something maybe after I've been laid off, yeah, from work. and then they go on and do business. And then we have another group of entrepreneurs who are only focused on the opportunity that exists, in the community or in the private sector. I think those are the entrepreneurs that businesses or the would-be investors in Malawi should focus on, because those entrepreneurs which are driven by opportunity are the ones that are going to stay on for a long time. Not for these ones who say, okay, I just have to start business because maybe I've been laid off from the former employment. Yeah. So those ones, for me, they're a risky group of entrepreneurs or would-be entrepreneurs.
You're taking this on board, right?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So thank you very much for now, Andrew. Ruud, you are highly experienced in international banking and doing business in Eastern Africa. What would you say sets Malawi apart from the rest of the region?
Well, I think on the financing side, from the outside in, a lot of countries will have a lot of experts, and for that are interested for parties outside to go in and to invest. And for Malawi, I think we really should look for local investments as well, and finding out if there are local people who can invest in local business. For instance, the government, if you look at the list of countries where our government is looking at, is are always looking at countries where there can be a give and take.
Yeah.
Now I did some research on financing developing countries, and I saw a couple of big hurdles. I wrote it down, that's why I have the paper here. The first one is ticket size. Most of the time when you go into a country, the ticket size for financing is somewhere between 100,000 and max $1 million. And most of the investors would like to invest from $1 million plus. So there is a gap between what financiers wants to do and the requirements out of the market. And there are exceptions, by the way. There's one sitting. Yeah. The other big hurdle is time to return. Formal investors just want to have a return in 3 to 5 years, probably 7 years. And they want to get out and they want to get a return. And sure, impact investing, but there needs to be a financial return next to the social and ecological return. That return must be there, and otherwise investors will not come in.
Right.
And
So they need to be a bit more patient, is what you say.
Yeah. And
How patient?
well, 10 years,
Okay.
something like that. And the third and last one, there are more, but this is an important one, is that you need technical assistance, as we call it. So you don't need only money. You need to have cooperation. You need to have work together. And that's where I believe that accessory terms, guys, can really work out, because they come in for a long period of time and they can actually sit next to the entrepreneur to help them out. So I think it's great for Malawi to have that in.
And they come with more than just money, they come with knowledge.
That's the idea.
With the network.
That's the
Yes.
idea.
Martin, this is a feather in your cap, I'm sure. How does it feel?
I think I will, after this session, I ask Andrew to be part of our marketing team.
Of course you will, yeah.
I can't wait to for it.
But maybe if he pays a true fee, you would never say it.
This is basically the story, and we're also to tell the lesson Andrew explained, like the 2 types of entrepreneurs. We should have met him before because we made that mistake already with our first case we invested in. That was indeed an entrepreneur who's doing it next to his job.
Yes.
And indeed, we are looking now, and we are working now with people that are doing it by heart and dare to take the financial risk to be depending on their own business. Like we are depending on our investments, our partners should also financially depend on the business, so that there's a great drive to really make it a success.
Yeah.
So it's for us also learning by doing, and also learning from these types of conversations.
Yeah.
And I understand also the remark of the ticket. That's also what we see in Malawi, like real SME, but then more on the S side, like the small side. Our investments are on average 20,000 euros. So it's exactly in the gap where nobody seems to be willing to invest.
They'll be sorry. We'll see. A couple of years time. Yeah. HIVO's investment sounds like an NGO, kind of like.
We are the for-profit fund manager and the fund manager is owned by HIVOS.
Yeah.
And our fund is in the cornerstone investment is by HIFOS, of course, but we also have 3 European NGOs. And we have actually a bank from Zimbabwe investing and some private investors from Africa. So we combine different NGOs from Europe, but also investors from the north and the south. So, but my shareholder of the fund manager is HIFOS. I know that's already made, but I also want to say it is not all new. So the second official project of HIFOS was actually making a loan, a microfinance loan, way long time ago. That HIFOS did that for a long time, experimented with it, successful. Then the central bank came to HIFOS, like you're borrowing money from the public, you're lending it to entrepreneurs. You're a bank, you don't have a license, so stop doing that. So HIFOS went to a small group of people in Zeist. They founded a bank, really strange and specific. You all know it, Triodos Bank. So the first fund of HIFOS, of Triodos is the HIFOS Triodos fund, a long time ago. So the whole story about it's new. That's really not true, because somehow we said microfinance is not NGOs, but NGOs invented it, and then we put it. Then the market can do it. Then we put it in brackets. Then we say, oh, then it's not an NGO anymore, and then that's private sector. But it's actually all started by Oxfam. I heard some remarks about our competitors Oxfam, and they also did the same. Triple Jim, who is managing the KGF, was started by Oxfam. So also these NGOs do things really, really right, and they're not as stupid in the market as everyone thinks, because as soon as the market can do it, then they stop doing it. And so the NGOs, by definition, do everything that is not a business case yet. And when it succeeds, then the market takes on. And that is what we're trying now, and also the small ticket sizes. So we are just from 50,000 up. I see that you actually invested in some companies that we rejected because we couldn't do it because our ticket size of 50,000 would be too small. So that validates your points. And I recognize some of the names that we talked about, nice entrepreneurs.
But do you think it's feasible though? Do you think it's possible to make an impact with what 20 to 50,000?
Well, the impact you can make, I think the big question is, that's not only your question, it's also my question. Does the business model work? And so we look what's cost here and how all these people need to be paid and right, and see how much money they invest. It's almost not possible. But people say that also to me, as what I'm doing is not possible. So I really hope you are really succeeding in what you're doing. And the reason it's not possible, no entrepreneur has ever been stopped by someone saying that it's impossible. So
I would like to because the reason why the ticket sizes are so high is because percentage of the ticket size is covering the costs of your company. So that would be my question as well. How is your own business model doing?
Yeah, that's my biggest question. And I really love the impact of course you make impact. It's impossible not to make impact in what you're doing. So.
Our ambition, we have 13 companies at the moment, okay. So that the model works.
13. 13. Yes.
So we have actually 14 because we just signed one
this afternoon.
So the model with 20,000 euros investment, it works because the companies are there, and this is actually the size of capital they need to start the business. Our own business model is not to be like lazy and look for that one cherry and you can pick and invest $1 million and then sit back and then relax and have your money back in 5 years' time. Our ambition for this year is to have 30 companies extra. So to have 30 companies extra. Yeah. So our business model is if you can benefit also because it's also for profit what we do, if you can benefit a small part from a lot of companies, then there is a business model which is feasible also for Dutch investors and a company like Accelerator to have a feasible business model.
That's because the money that you actually invest, you can keep the profit and anything above the money that you borrowed from investors, right? So you're borrowing money for 3%, you invest it and you can keep the profit. So they're not the fund manager, there's a fund manager and the fund. And that is why if they make a profit, they can keep the profit that normally would go to the investor. Well, you only return 3% to the investor, you keep the profit, additional profit, right?
Yeah, we take both the financial risk and big part.
Then it's possible to do it with smaller things. So that makes sense. Yes.
Yes.
It's
all right. Your investments are obviously a lot larger.
A little bit.
How effective are they?
They're super effective. No, it's, so we make two projections. One on finance, do we get the money back? So if I invest €1, I want to have €4 or €5 profits. So we make projections. So I really need a high return. So for high impact. And we do the same for impact. We just made an investment into a company. They make sea containers where in their solar they have LED lamps and they grow food with 95% less water and no pesticides. They actually sell that in refugee areas, so they're now shipping 80 of those containers to Mozambique to do that. And €1 that I invest feeds a refugee for 44 days. Now that's very effective. We're now talking with another company actually in Malawi. We invest 50 cents in it, and we invest 50 cents in the company, of course more, but if you per farmer, and a farmer makes $90 per year extra, so that's an immense multiplier that you can have. If I give you 50 cents, your income increases with 20%. So that's a really
I
big.
want some of that myself.
Yeah, no, but then we should talk. If we say this is model like they do, we enter it. So I think if you look to Malawi, Malawi is really important. And it's also relatively easy to make a really big impact because at the moment, if you go to a small village and you provide medical aid or whatever, you immediately have a really big impact. I think also the entrepreneurial chances are really big because the market is inefficient, and we all know as investors, we need to exploit market inefficiencies. It sounds cruel, but the opportunities, if you have the means and you have the capital and you have the idea, you can scale your business quite quickly. And if you go from 50,000 to 200,000, 200,000 is nothing, but it's a times 4 multiplier. So, yes.
So Martin, you've elaborated on it already. Accelerator focuses on growth. You're talking about 30 enterprises in how much time from now?
End of the year.
In end of the year. That's very ambitious.
Yeah, but indeed. And like I explained, our business model works like that. We need to grow fast in the mass of businesses, also to sustain our own business model. And the other thing is that the owners of Accelerator also like to have ambitious goals, which are not impossible, but need good and hard work.
Mm-hmm. So I think you're planning on going to Zambia, Tanzania as well?
Yeah, that will be the next step for us of this business model. What we do, reworks in Malawi, and prove is there.
So you're giving yourself until the end of this year to prove Malawi so that you can transport it across the borders?
Yeah, I think for our agenda for next year
that's
will be.
VOC mentality.
I would stay in Malawi.
You would?
Yeah, because the reason why it works in Malawi is because you have no competition. Right? So people give you 40% for 7,000. That's an immensely good deal that you're making. If you go to Zambia, there's a lot of NGO money. There's a lot of friends that they can access. You have a lot of competitors. They will outbid you in the deals. Then it's not possible anymore to make these small investments. So the reason why it's working for you is because there's no one else. So if you go to Tanzania and to Zambia, you will meet competition and they will ask less percentage or offer more money for a smaller ticket, and then it's not possible anymore.
Something in the way you're looking tells me you don't agree.
No, completely. I fully understand that part. And indeed, we have one competitor, by the way, in Malawi. Small companies doing the same, and we would invite more competition in Malawi because it's like if you want to buy shoes, you want to go to a street in the center where you have 10 shops with shoes that you can easily shop. And from the perspective of the entrepreneurs in Malawi, it would be great if they have investors lined up and they can just ask, what's your bid, and can just pick the best bid. I think it's not in the interest of Malawi that we are the only investor there that's doing what we are doing. Yes, we would like to have competition also to improve our own business model. So yes, we will definitely go to Zambia. There's a better landscape also for us.
So the competition doesn't scare you once you cross the border. So what makes you so optimistic?
Maybe it's also Miriam's story, which I always think is really inspiring. So thank you, Miriam, for the story at the start, because
about the narrative of it, yes.
I really believe that this can be done, and this is also if you have that mindset, then, and you see every step you take, and which we have taken with Accelerator, that you start with one company, and then you have two, and now we have 14, and in a year we should have 43. And every time you take a step, you see it's working. You see it's working. That's where.
But it's working in Malawi. That doesn't mean it will work in Zambia.
Why not? Yeah, you see, the context is always different, but that's why we work with people like Patrick.
But things that work in the Netherlands don't work in Italy. It's about the same scale.
No, it's not about what we think should work in a certain country. It's about looking at what entrepreneurs in a certain context think they should develop and how we can contribute this. And it's more, it's making access to the knowledge they need. It's making access to the capital they need to start their business. And I think that can be done in every context.
Yes. Do you agree?
Yes.
Whatever works for Malawi as a model would work elsewhere in Africa or in the world?
Probably not in the world, but neighboring countries, Malawi, Zambia, Tanzania, this thing can work out. Simply because I think the climatic conditions the same, the cultures are also more or less the same.
They are?
Yeah, not because if you studied well about Africa, that side, Bantus, Malawi, Zambia, Tanzania, they are more or less, yeah. So what we are doing in Malawi will also be workable in Zambia, will also be workable in Tanzania, Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's scope for you to grow, according to Patrick.
I also think that the core features of this accelerator model, I think they could apply anywhere else within the Southern African context, because as I understand their their core features are like partnerships. And I think partnerships, collaborations are the way forward if you have to make impact, to make your program successful. Issues like taking into account local circumstances and all that in terms of the culture, as my colleague has said here, those things would make the business or the model successful in Zambia as well. Our cultures are similar.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would like to add to that. I think I'm the chairman of BID Network, and BID is Business in Developing Countries. And we are actually using a similar module in Uganda, Rwanda, but by taking up deals locally and get it funded by informal investors here in the Netherlands. We take informal trips, and we see two scarce resources, and that's capital, and that is local people, local knowledgeable people. And the pipeline is so big that we can't cover it at all. So I think I would welcome you to Uganda and partner together with BID Network, because we need the capital and we need the resources.
I'm really happy to discuss this invitation.
Things are going swimmingly for you today, Mike.
That's also an entrepreneurship. Something that should be done like maybe next year and can be done tomorrow.
I do like the gleam in your eye. I mean, it shows me that you really are enthusiastic and your heart is in it. But allow me just for 2 minutes to be the devil's advocate, because you really would not be the first one to not succeed in an African context. So does that keep you awake sometimes?
No, not really. I think one way or the other, this will work out. If I wasn't confident doing that and was awake at night, then I probably never started it or would stop it. And that doesn't mean that everything we will touch will be a success. Like I said, the first business we started is not a success because we made the mistake. We didn't distinguish the two types of entrepreneurs explained. So yes, we have setbacks. Entrepreneurship is about to overcome those types of setbacks, to start again, and maybe to start again, and maybe to start again.
Learn from your mistakes and move on.
Yeah, and if you have like-minded people, that's what we are looking for in Malawi, like real life, and then we will get there together.
It brings me to the general questions. How exactly do you do that selection? How do you select your entrepreneurs in Malawi?
Basically, we interact, like Patrick explained. We are not asking for entrepreneurs to literally say, do you want to do this? Do you want to do agricultural business? Or do you want to start a factory or whatever? We make ourselves known and then we just say we are interested in business plans. And we have quite some discussions with the entire office to say, no, and then you should make like formats, and then they can fill it in, and then like a checklist, and then say, no, that's not the way we should do it, because the first test would be what's in somebody's mind. Just like give somebody a blank page, and then let them write themselves what their dream is. So we always start with what is your dream, and do you have also the drive to really accomplish it? Do you want to take risk? And that's
And what do you need for your first step?
And then we determine like together what is your dream. So that must be what we set for the 5-year partnership. That's where we are going to go. And then we will take like the first step and make that like the growth path together, and then we do it together. And then we have to really be convinced that somebody is really willing to do it and has some basic knowledge about how to run a business and about the product they're making, whatever. And when there are shortfalls, we are happy to try to fill it in.
Yes. And on the business idea side, how does that selection go? You just explained that you ask people for their dreams and try to see where there's a...
Basically, it's any viable business. We are not in the pictures you saw is mostly agriculture, but that's because most Malawians who offer their business plans to us are about agriculture, because the economy is agricultural based.
Yes.
But if somebody says, do I want to do transport, or I want to do, we have also a dairy factory, we have a company that recycles.
Dairy in Africa? Most people are lactose intolerant.
I do like them. No, it's,
I like
Sure,
this.
you should check it out. Yeah.
So we also do production types of businesses, but we don't come up with the ideas. So we let the local entrepreneurs share their dream with us, not the other way around.
In what sectors do you think growth will be expected in Malawi? Apart from agriculture, which is obvious.
Yeah, apart from agriculture, I think small industries,
Like what?
for instance, production of things or items that we import from other countries would be well.
What do you import in Malawi from other countries?
We import quite a lot. Electronics,
Yeah.
even household utensils, sometimes even chairs.
There's no right.
Sometimes we do. Of course, we have small industries in the country who also produce the same, but maybe out of preference, people also love items from abroad. But if we can empower local Malawians to make a chair like this one, to make cups or tumblers like these ones, and sell them in Malawi, that would be welcome, because we'll be able to
So that
sell.
needs a mind change, because of course, I'm coming back to what we talked about earlier. The world is inundated with Western ideas and Western gadgets and Western glasses and chairs. And we've all learned, all of us, not only here, but in the whole world, we've learned that what comes from this part of the world is better. So how do you teach Malawians that a chair made in Malawi is the same or even better than the one that's imported? Because that's a paradigm shift.
Yes, you're very right. I think the basic point I'm seeing here is about quality. If a company is able to make a chair exactly like that one, I don't think someone would be compelled to import. If the quality fits,
Yeah,
that's it.
but that shouldn't be a problem, should it? To make a chair like that one.
It could be a problem once there's need for better skills, machinery.
So then
And
we
some other things
we
too.
make a little factory for screws. That's another business.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
We can. So there's need for good technical knowledge on how to make a good chair.
But the first chairs ever made were African. Do Africans need to learn from the West how to make a chair?
Not exactly like that, but
I'm just being a pain, but that's why they asked me to do this thing. Yeah.
yeah, we're not necessarily supposed to be taught on how to make chairs. The knowledge could be there, but it's a matter of perfecting it so that we make better chairs. chairs have been there all along, but we're talking of better chairs, nice chairs.
Yeah.
Actually,
Pretty
key.
pink color.
It's easy to beat the Chinese chairs in terms of quality.
Definitely, that's very.
So, and then
I
there
can
are-
make a better one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are there. If you have the quality chairs, they can be made in Malawi locally with the same quality, but it can be cheaper because you can cut out all types of
Oh,
costs.
little
You can-
people.
you can-
Yes.
you can make
All the
that.
import of wood from here, we
Yeah.
don't need.
The reason why it doesn't happen, and we have those type of cases also in our portfolio, is because if you want to make a chair like this and make it look like this, you need a machine. And that machine will cost you an investment of somewhere between $10,000 and $50,000. And the local guy who's doing this for 10 years already, producing the nice chairs, can never make the finish like chairs people want to buy in that quality because he can't invest in that machine.
And he can't make it.
And then he can sell his
like
pen to
this.
others.
Then you can sell it to you. Okay, good.
Just to complement what
Yes.
my colleague Patrick has already said, another potential industry that I see based on the research that I've conducted so far is the tourism and hospitality industry. There is so much potential, but then if you look at the players there, they're mostly foreign. Indigenous people are mostly left out because of things like capital. So I think it's an industry that is growing, but then people don't realize that it has got a potential and a future to contribute toward sustainable economic development of Malawi. So if there are investors here, I would urge you to go and invest in the tourism and hospitality industry. But then there should be this thing of taking into account the social and the environmental impact because we want our natural resources to be intact.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which brings me to an idea that I just had purely on my own, because this year, 2019, is what the African Union calls the year of return. So there are many African countries who have already ratified the resolution to, as they say, bring Africans' children home. That's people like me. That's people from the diaspora. People who grew elsewhere from Africa, who are trained in a Western way, maybe have some Western capital, to go back to Africa, go back, so to speak, and start working there. Would you consider actively looking for investors like myself, or people with knowledge like myself, or people from the diaspora, to include them? Because I'm still looking for a way to right some wrongs from the past. You have to forgive me for that.
As an entrepreneur, as an investor.
Yes, but as both.
As both.
Is
Yes.
it something you? The question is:
Yeah.
are you actively looking in that corner to get your stuff done in Africa? Are you looking for people like me to go back to Africa and work with you and invest with you? And
No, not at the moment.
but you should.
Apparently, it's a great opportunity to do that.
But were you aware of this? That the African Union is calling home its children?
No, I wasn't.
Okay.
No. So, we once had a discussion. It would be great if the investors we have that provide the capital we work with, would we actually partner? Why couldn't that be?
Mm-hmm.
So if maybe it's even better if somebody said, no, I bring my own money and my own ideas, and I'm questioning back then is how good are you still in understanding the local context if you go back there? So is it wise to how embedded would you be?
Yeah.
But then more I would advise you as a competitor and invest with us.
Yes. Yeah.
But there are no Malawis in there, so if there's immigration, more from Zimbabwe. So in Zimbabwe, a lot of people that fled the country went to South Africa and now coming back and bringing in skills.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have a big diaspora of Malawi people in Europe. And so I think I like I
I'm
like
talking Caribbean. I'm
I
talking the
like
United
the
States.
Western African, but I think you're doing it's like you're doing the West, you have Panama, you have Africa, you have Africa, The African people, they go to South Africa. They don't go to the whole to Europe. That's also why there's no development aid, because they don't bring
No,
immigrants.
but I'm talking about the people.
And the technology, the problem is that I see they go to other places that are developed, so they don't get a technology for Europe. They go to India.
Yes, but
Because
that's not
India
my
is also-
answer, I am.
But I mean, you say you have Africa and Netherlands, but you also have Africa and other countries. You have connections between Malawi and India. So the world is not tangible or two places like the white Europe and black Africa. You also have like India, and you have they go to China, they go to Latin America. So the world is a globe, not a line.
No, but I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you on that. But you're talking about people voluntarily leaving their place and searching another
No, of
life.
course not. The
I'm
people who didn't go outside.
I'm talking about the people whose ancestors were forcibly taken from Africa and put in the Caribbean and put in the United States and put in South America. I'm talking about people like me.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. That's the difference.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to look for a way that this can work for everybody. And at the same time, we are righting wrongs from the past. That's what I'm trying to do. Maybe it's very naive, but I'm just trying.
I would look to a practical solution and get the people that are educated in South Africa going back to the neighboring countries. That seems more practical to me.
That seems not practical.
Well, what I believe is that countries like Malawi are in the lowest of the poorest countries in the world. And what they need, except for entrepreneurship, is good infrastructure, good education, and capital. And I think if the diaspora returns to the countries and they bring in knowledge and education and capital, so keeping the savings into the countries themselves, getting the interest rates low. Sorry, I'm a financial guy. So the interest rates are high because there's a lot of loans and there's no credit, there's no savings. So if they actually bring in their knowledge and their savings, and you get in that balance, that is the quality that really improves the whole country. So at the end of the day, it's about quality and people who are willing to return to their home country. I would applaud for that.
Okay. I don't think I made my point, but maybe we shouldn't talk about it now. Let me switch in my head.
I understand what you're saying. It's an important issue, but it is not an overruling issue that rules the world and how it works. And so I understand. By colonial, it was really bad. Now something bad happened. But we cannot solve all the problems by going back to that problem and from that then solve the problem. So if you want to solve the problems in Malawi, I think there are more effective ways to actually help the people in Malawi than going back to work with your talking, because there are not so many people from Malawi in Holland. So
No,
what
but
can
they
we
don't
do?
have to be. That's not what the African Union says. They don't have to be.
But what is then the I understand but what can we do? What can he do? What can I do? When you
Well,
take
you
the
could make a concerted effort to actually shop among those people.
No, but I think we should shop the people in Malawi. Are we now going to shop the people that have a Western education and are
Well,
we going
you're from the West, and you're in the south of Africa. You are making money in Africa.
to start with? I don't make money in Africa, so the investors in my fund they make money.
Yes, yes, and they pay you every month.
Yes,
Right. So that's what I'm saying. So in a way, you are profiting from the situation in Africa. Let's just put it that way.
I'm a world citizen and I want to change the world and I do that where it's most cost effective. I
Yes,
think
but
that at this moment I can have the biggest impact on making the world.
But not everybody can be a global citizen. That's the exact point I'm trying to make. But let's skip this. You have that privilege, not everybody does.
I understand.
And I'm trying to find a way to have people who do not have that privilege still get a little bit of it. That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I understand this, but I think that you're slapping. So you're taking away our action perspective by looking at that.
How so?
Because I cannot source, and I think it's good that African Union does that. You know, I really understand it. But is it that that's the role of the African Union to do that and to do that with people coming back? I don't have a role in that process. That's something that the African Union should do. And I applaud it, and you're right, it's a good movement. But we go to Malawi to make investments. So, so that is a different story. It's what you're saying is important, but what we are doing is important. I don't see the connectedness. And we're saying that we don't relate to that story, and that makes us less. But I don't see that.
Wonderful.
That's yeah.
Thank you for that. So moving back to the accelerator model, how sustainable do you think it is? How long will we be talking about the accelerator model? How will it go on from here? Do you think?
How would go on from here? Now, as I explained, we apparently are going to Uganda very fast. Now, our goal is to have a few hundred businesses started in Malawi. And the best thing for us would be if those businesses really become self-sustainable, and that also the money we will get from those type of investment back, of course, firstly it will be reinvested like in other companies in Malawi, and then if Accelerator can also self-sustain because we have like the same idea of how the business model works for our own company, so we have also 5 years to get use of our external investors. So for 2025, we want to have like our own capital so that we can invest in it. And then we've proven that this concept can work, and then probably we'll start in Zambia, probably we'll start in Tanzania or Uganda first. I believe that's and so that's what our perspective for this moment. If this work can be really a big movement we can set in motion, it would be great.
Mm-hmm. So if you dare dream, let's say 25 years from now, what will the accelerator model have meant for that corner of Africa?
Hopefully, then it wouldn't be called the accelerator model anymore. Just it would be like the common sense of how you can also have an impact in a relationship or equally based with just world citizens as we all are in Africa and in Europe. And in 25 years, and I hope I can sit back and relax and watch how it works.
How it works, sure. I hope so too.
Patrick,
What's your vision for 25 years from now?
Yeah, I also share the same vision with Martin. Probably just to add on how sustainable the model is. I explained that we look for businesses which are profitable, and what we're trying to say here is that the initial investment that we make after 5 years, the funds should grow, and when there is profitability and also good management, there's automatically sustainability. So this is what we have started, and the business that we intend to start this year, put together, grow, and as we are exiting, we'll also be able to create new partners and grow big. So some years to come, Cecilia is going to be a big company, and with tangible impact of Malawi. So.
Great. Eastern Africa in 25 years.
Well, in 25 years, I think the Netherlands will be called a developing country. And that's because the resources are not here, the resources are there.
Yes.
And I truly believe that taking benefit of the resources in a good way, that's what's happening right now, will really change that balance as was introduced at the beginning as well. So that's what I believe. I think there will be a steep learning curve for you as well. Sorry for that, but there will be bad debts, there will be country risks, all the kind of things will happen. But in 25 years, I think we have a complete change of the balance between the North and the South.
Do you agree, Andrew?
Yes, I do agree. And I think my vision based on this model, I see Malawi or Africa in general having a critical mass of entrepreneurs who are export driven, taking opportunities that exist in the international market, and even countries like the Netherlands, the developed countries, opening up to products from the developing world. Because I think the key to economic development or sustainable development for Africa and other parts of the developing world is trade. we've seen how international trade can do wonders to a poor country. So yeah, that is my vision in 20, 25 years time.
Thank you.
I agree. To look to the education in Africa, that takes a lot of time, so you cannot pump the education in people because that takes a lot of time. I think the basis for to actually educate your young people is really big, and that's where it starts. And so a country like Zimbabwe is even a high literacy rate. Mugabe is not a nice person, but he was a teacher, so he educated his people. So yeah, that gives a tremendous human capital. I think human capital in Africa is really big.
That's the whole.
So I wish actually, so that I know I'm privileged here in the Netherlands, blah, blah,
Yeah.
but actually, you know, I wish I had all this knowledge, and then of course we would always to be born in a younger body, but this time in Africa with all the opportunities and to do actually there, I think you can really make as a young person a really big change in Africa. And it's super difficult. So everything is here more easy. The possibility to do something really big is bigger there.
It is.
Yeah.
And the motivation is huge.
Yes.
Last thing for you, Martin. Mirjam was talking about every African has Facebook and Skype and WhatsApp these days. Is that a way for you to do business on Skype and on WhatsApp?
Yeah, we use Skype really frequently. And you had a question in the first round, like, why has this never been done before?
Yeah.
I still remember that 10 years ago, you would want to make like some type of phone call to your home country. It was hello, I don't know, for 5 minutes, really expensive. And nowadays we have an option where we are in touch every day.
Yes.
We use some video conferencing and things like that.
So that's the way forward.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you all so very much. And I wish you all the very best of luck. And well, I don't remember who stole my line, but let's repeat it. Let's make Africa great again. And I really wish you the best of luck, Martin, with Accessory.
Thank you.
All three gentlemen, thank you so much. Yes, you may leave your seats because there's one more thing that you have all, I'm sure, absolutely been waiting for. Because at the beginning of the gathering, I mentioned the fact that the researchers of Emma and the designers of Studio Lammert Jongman have created the Accelerator magazine 2018. And it's time now for the presentation. So here to explain why they did it and how they did it are Emma's researchers, Laura Sophie van der Rijden and Gijs Kist.
Hey, zijn we in Malawi. We zijn nu bij YJ's, het eerste bedrijf, net straight out of the airplane hier naartoe. Zijn jullie helemaal wakker? Niet helemaal. Maarten en Joyce zijn weer aan het bespreken hoe we business case met elkaar zien. Heb je ook geld met YJ's doen? Nee. YJ's maakt zeep. Allerlei soorten zeep, handzeep. Goedleren, zeep. Wat wel zeep? Wat wel zeep? Zeep. Alle van zeep. Kunnen wij even doen? Ga kijken hoe dit eruit ziet. Ja, dat is heel dat is zeker. Hey, Mike. Talking in public in a place like this is not really our strong suit, but we're gonna give it a go.
Yeah.
Thank you. But yeah, so we went to Malawi, we saw amazing people, we met these people and a lot more entrepreneurs. We noticed that there are very, very friendly people. The country is a good place. I mean, we've talked about it, it's a good place to be as an investor, as an entrepreneur.
And we noticed all entrepreneurs, as said before, you can see 3 of them here. Godfrey, Peggy, and Mombo are all very, very optimistic about the future, about their own business. They see some challenges, but let's face it, Malawi is great, and yeah, they'll come up with the solutions.
Yeah, and we went to Malawi to make this. So we did it the Emma way, we did research. We went there, but we also did research in the Netherlands. We spoke to people, we interviewed people, and we also talked a lot with Martin. We tried to give them advice about how they could maybe change their, well, I wouldn't say business model, but maybe do that. But maybe we tried to give them advice on the things that we noticed in Malawi and things that we got from the entrepreneurs to, improve little things. And we also organized these events, we did the communication, so there's a lot of stuff that we have been doing the last couple of months.
In the Emma way.
In the Emma way.
And we couldn't have done it without Studio Lammert Jongman designers. They're not here, but they have to be thanked. Last Sunday night, 11:30, the last corrections were made to the magazine, so they worked very, very hard as well. We have to thank Emma for this opportunity. Very grateful to travel to Malawi to do this research, the first international project for Emma. Hopefully there will follow more. And last but not least, we have to thank Robert and Maarten of Accelerator for this opportunity and the freedom they gave us to research, to write everything down we wanted. So yeah, Robert and Maarten, can you come up for this very official moment? Here you go.
You haven't
Wow.
seen it yet, right?
Only it's beautiful.
And everyone will get one. They're all on the table there, so go get a drink and get a magazine.
Oh, there's one thing, or 2 things.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Like
Oh, don't run away, come back. There are 2 things. First, I would like to have this opportunity to make some promotion about Accelerator. I think a lot of it has already been said, but and you all probably right now are very interested to go yourself to Malawi. Somewhere in October, we're gonna organize a trip for investors, potential investors, or people who just are very interested in seeing Malawi to come along with us. There are between 10, 15 spots, so be quick or just subscribe for our newsletter, and then you will be notified when everything is arranged. So that's the first thing. And the second thing I think is even more important. I want to thank Gijs and Laura for everything they did. Indeed, we gave you a free assignment to write basically down everything you encountered, everything you saw, and because that's also the reason and basically the way we work. We want to establish a fair company, an open company, in which we can say everything to each other that is needed to be said, and I think you did as well. The conversations we had were for us very inspiring as well, because you came back with all kind of new insights in how we should communicate. Some would like to have WhatsApp, some would like to have Skype, and I think it came to us as well that not everybody is the same. Also, our partners in Malawi are all different and also need to be treated different, and that's also something you gave back to us, and that's something we try to put in our way of working. So therefore, I thank you. I'm really looking forward to read it, and probably you also. I'm not going to keep you busy with my long speech, but in the end, you did it with a lot of energy. You drove all the way there, you flew all the way there, you drove like 2,000 kilometers with a lot of energy. You wrote this last piece and this piece of art. So we want to give you a gadget of Accelerator. At least keep your phone. Have enough energy.
A little energy back.
lastly, we really want to invite you around Christmas, both of you, to have dinner with us, so we can highlight everything that happens in 2009. Thank you. Oh, thank you.
That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Informal drinks. Thank you all for coming.